approach all things
with reason.
Reason.
Reasonable.
Dissent.
Reasonable Dissent with the BlackWolf and Kopus Milady.
All right.
Alrighty.
Now I got my fancy clothes on. I want to talk a little bit about some drip, some cash, some money, some flow.
Yeah.
What are your... Now, I've had an adverse relationship with money most of my life.
Yeah, money abandons me like women. Sorry, what?
Is that... women actually are the reason why I have a healthier relationship with money. Now, it's not perfect, but as of like...
You gotta have enough for them, right?
you would think that would be it, but that's not the case with me, actually. I had a DMT experience, and I'll go ahead and let you know. I had never done DMT before, and I was really curious on what DMT was, and I happened to find someone, a comic that had some, and we did it in a parking lot. It's a very short experience. It takes maybe about 10-15 minutes to do it. And at the time, I was I'd say probably anxious about money. That would probably be. I was working and I was making enough, but I could never keep enough in my pocket. I had no investments. I was always pouring out more, and then didn't have much reserve or whatnot. So I took some of this DMT, and during this experience, I saw two figures. I saw my mother, and I saw my wife. She was my wife at the time. She was my mother at the time. And both of these women in my life held a good vibration with money. They both expected money, was what I was basically understanding. They expected it because they were used to it. Now, my mom wasn't always used to money. And my wife didn't have a lot of money at the time because she was with me.
Right.
But she was used to having it. So she didn't have the same sort of fear and anxiety about cash that I did. So what I gathered, if I just relied on the fact that since these two prominent figures in my life were going to hold that vibration for me, and I just kind of relaxed a bit, that I could change my relationship with money. So what I started doing? Going to casinos.
Yeah, okay.
I started going to
I'll
casinos.
say you changed your relationship with money, yes.
And I won some, I lost some, but I started not caring so much about it. I started being a little bit more frivolous with it. And I wouldn't suggest this experience to anybody. This is a personal experience. I wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah.
But from doing that, I felt more comfortable with it. And now I'm doing better with money mentally than I've ever done. And I'm not rich, and I don't have a ton of money, but I feel like it ain't going to escape me.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just sharing that experience with you because it's recent, and when I think of the money concept, that's what like pops into my head. So yeah, I think money's a trick, man. I think it's not necessarily like I've met so many people with amazing skills that if you were based upon skills and achievement and that person's honor and their worth, their pockets would be full.
Right.
But they didn't have full pockets.
Exactly.
And I've also met some scumbags that got loads
Got all
of
that
dough.
green stuff. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I've noticed over the course of the years is that we tend to have this. We, as most us folks, tend to have this odd relationship with money, in that we think that we tend to look at money as the root of all evil, and this is it's a deliberate misquote, really. Money is not the root of all evil. And I think that what ends up happening is because we start thinking that it is that money's the root of all evil, then we look at money as inherently evil, and so we start to get rid of it. Or we're looking at things and go, okay, how much can I get that for? And then we just get a little bit of money and then get it to that as quick as possible. And I think that a lot of it is a subconscious thought.
Right.
You know, because we get this idea that the money itself can bring all kinds of negativity into our lives because we've associated it with greed. Half of us have, and the other half of us have associated it with superficial things and the flashiness, and everybody's got to see how much money I have and stuff like that.
Yeah, I had this story that was told to me because I grew up poor, and it was that you're going to be poor because you're a creative artist until you hit it big.
Yeah.
And then when you hit it big, all your money problems are going to go away.
Yeah.
And you're going to...
I think we all kind of have that desire for that to happen, you know.
So instead of like, hey, you know what? It's okay to have money now. And you don't necessarily need to earn it. All you have to do is accept it. Because here's another real funny thing. That there are professions out there where you can get paid an insane amount of money for doing very little work. And there are also professions
Can I know some of those professions, please? Because I'm real lazy.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, reselling is one of them, where you can buy something
I'm too lazy for that.
for pennies on the dollar and make per hour way more money than you can with a lot of better professions. But I would say probably the one that I've experienced where they make way too much money for what they do is lawyers.
Yeah.
And I've worked for a lot of lawyers. And they get paid to remember things.
Wow.
They get paid to remember rules and regulations, kind of like a spell book, right? They get they get paid to remember all of these spells.
Yeah.
And if they can say those magic words in the right order, then they can
And with
get
the right
tons
pronunciation.
of money.
Right, exactly.
And they spend most of their time sitting around talking like me and you, except from their spell books.
Exactly.
That's all they do.
Yeah.
It's when you talk about justice, we just talked about justice in one of our previous episodes, where we brushed upon it. These people are not seeking justice for the most part.
No.
Not the ones that get paid well.
Now they're looking to get paid well.
They're looking to get paid well.
Right.
It's kind of like being a pimp.
Exactly.
You know, they get clients and they say, hey, this thing happened to you. Well, I need you to go in here and say this and that and that.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to collect my little piece. And because I wear my fancy suit and I can come over there and talk my way with the clients, I'm going to get that cash.
Exactly.
You know?
Well, a lot of times what ends up happening in, I forgot who told me this, and it was somebody who actually was a lawyer or something to that effect, but essentially they told me that what you actually see in the courtroom is relationship advertising. And that's why you very rarely see a lawyer who looks like me or who looks like you. Right. Because people who look like us would not hang out with that judge. People that wear $3,000 suits and a $25,000 watch and drive a $2 million car hang out with a judge like that.
People that look like Joe Biden or Donald Trump would hang out with a judge like that.
Yeah, well, except for the orange skin.
Well, yeah.
There's a reason I call him Ugly Orange. Anyway.
I've seen some pretty red-skinned lawyers. They tend to drink a lot, so
Yes.
maybe not orange, but they got the blush going on.
Right, exactly. But there was one lawyer in Houston courthouse. I won't tell you why I was there. There was one lawyer that kind of blew me away every time I saw him. You don't get to climb on my clothes. This one lawyer was long gray hair. Yeah. Right? Kept it in a ponytail. He had baggy, he had a suit, a full suit. But baggy pants, the suit was oversized, and you're sitting there going, I hope to God that guy's not my lawyer. I thought he was one of the people being represented. No, he was the lawyer.
I used to work for an Indian lawyer in Los Angeles that had a similar suit like that. It was a real baggy suit, and he never had his paperwork together. He was always like, "Oh, I forgot something." First name Patel. I won't say last name, but he was a really, really brilliant lawyer, and I think part of his shtick, part of his strategy,
being disorganized,
was to appear disorganized.
Okay.
So he could come out with some brilliant moments. He would show these flashes of brilliance, and I always wondered, is this an act?
Right, exactly.
Or is he legitimately doing this? But getting back on the topic of money. Is a simple example of you can do the same job but decide how much money you make is a car salesperson. Now you can be a used car salesperson and you might make $100.
My language. I did sales for not car sales, but I did sales for about 8 years, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Right.
So it depends on how well you push the customer.
Also depends on what you're selling. Are you selling a Lamborghini or are you selling a used Honda Accord?
Right.
Because if you sell that Lambo, you're going to make a hell of a lot bigger commission. Same with real estate.
Right.
Are you selling, some little apartments inside a bad neighborhood to some slumlords, or are you selling these beautiful estates inside Malibu?
You're just playing with the commission at that point. I like how my brother worked in car sales for 10, 12 years. At one point, they had him doing the pre-owned lot, and there was this guy over here. He was complaining about this Honda that he wanted for much less than the sticker price, which you can't do.
Yeah.
And or much less than the price that my brother could do. And finally goes, it's a Honda. My brother says, no, it's a previously owned Honda. He says, but it's got this scratch here and this and that and all this other. He says, no. He says, you will never find another car on the road, anything like this car that has exactly that scratch right there. He sold it to the guy for that. He sold it to the guy for that.
The other funny thing about money, too, is people bet on, the future of companies with these stocks, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, they make a living just gambling. But they do it legally, or they do it with these stocks. Like that's their,
and technically that's exactly what it is gambling.
It's just gambling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, with the stocks, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But they make tons of money doing it. So like we really do choose. I mean, any of us could, get into these other businesses. But when I look at stocks, I think dirty work.
Yeah.
And I've done a lot of dirty work in my time. I worked for a sex show. I cleaned toilets.
Lucky bastard. Sorry. Well, not for the cleaning toilets part.
I worked for lawyers, which was probably the dirtiest thing I did. But I associated, these sleazy Wall Street types.
Yeah.
And
you associated money with sleaze. Yeah.
Yeah. But it is a rigged system in a sense. Like the more you get into it and you learn about the inner workings of stocks, it is a rigged system, and it's a club that not everyone has access to. But things are starting to change with the internet. So I do think that in general, with money, and it's the whole going back to another previous episode where we were talking about, you be that change. I think it's what we kind of perceive it to be.
Yeah.
If we perceive it to be something that's unattainable, we will never obtain it. If we perceive it to be something that's just around the corner, it will always be just around the corner. It will never quite be there. If you perceive it to be there now, then that's a good place to grow from.
Yeah.
Because then you can be like, all right, well, I got enough now to do this, but I really want to do this.
That, right.
And
there's it's interesting that we're discussing right now the perception issue. In both this episode and the one that we talked about before, as far as being the change and how we perceive the world.
Yeah.
This scene from an old movie in the 1990s, flashed in my mind. It was the movie was called Sneakers. It had Ben Kingsley and Robert Redford in it. You should watch it.
Sneakers, okay.
Yeah, there's a scene. Sneakers used to be the old word for hackers.
Oh, all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there was this scene where Ben Kingsley and Robert Redford are sitting on an old Cray computer. I know you don't know what those are. The Cray computers were the big supercomputers, and they got to be about
I thought
this
you were just
tall.
a year older than me. Man, what a year makes.
Dude. I grew up around tube technology, man. I know I probably look like it too. Anyway, but they were sitting on this old Cray computer, and Kingsley looks at Redford and he makes this comment. He said, "When I was in prison, one thing I learned is that everything in this world, including money, operates not on reality, but on the perception of reality."
Yeah, bingo. I think right now, cryptocurrency is a wonderful example about how, and also this pandemic. When I don't know where we'll be on that timeline when this drops, but there's a lot of people that I've seen get rich during this pandemic, and there's a lot of people I've seen lose everything.
Carl Jung said, if you want to know the purpose of a thing, look to the result.
Sure.
And so you start to see what the purpose of the pandemic was.
And that's definitely a transfer of wealth. That was
And
one of
power.
the purposes, and power. Sure.
Get people obsessed with power, start chasing power, and then they get to have control over the money, then they get to have control over your life because you're a private individual, and so you don't deserve the money that we have, and all this other BS.
Yeah, it is interesting when you give people more control, and when you have more control too.
I forgot who it was that said, if you want to see the character of a man, give him a little control, give him a little power.
Oh yeah.
And see what happens. But I think you can actually see that beforehand.
Here's the thing. I've had a little bit of control several times, low level positions of management, associate producer like roles where I'm in charge of a few people, and you have decisions at that point in time.
Oh yeah.
You can either decide to provide opportunities for people and help people in the best way that you possibly can with the little bit of power that you got.
Yeah.
Or you can decide to use that little bit of power to elevate
Tyrannize.
yourselves and to get things.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. So here's here's something that I've come to discover over the course of time. You hear that, if you give a man power, you see his character, but I think you can actually tell what would happen if you gave him character by the way he talks before he ever gets that power. Because if his obsession is with power,
Sure.
then that means he has a fear of power. Men are obsessed with the things they fear.
Okay.
And the thing is, when you have an individual who's constantly talking about power, gaining power, he's afraid of this person who's in power, this and that and thus, you start to understand that this person, if you give him power, he's more likely to use it for revenge than for creativity. But if you talk to someone who's talking about responsibility, talking about taking care of people, talking about giving other people an opportunity, you start talking to somebody who is of a creative mind, you can instantly tell that if you give them power, they don't see it as power, they see it as opportunity to create.
Sure.
And they will go from there.
Along with responsibility.
Exactly.
So power can be a big bummer sometimes.
Exactly.
When you become a parent, I'm not a parent, you are a parent.
I am
aren't
a
you?
parent, yeah.
You have a power there that you didn't have before, right?
Right. But it's a matter of, do you see it as power or do you see it as responsibility? That's the question.
Sure.
So like for me, so I grew up in a time and in a home when parents saw it as power.
Yeah.
And the way I see it is as a responsibility, because the child is not, children are not stupid. They're just inexperienced. The power, when you start playing a power game with that child, you lose. When you start playing, or if you have a narcissistic parent, if you start playing a power game with your narcissistic parent, you lose, right? If you see it as an opportunity to take responsibility, one thing I said in my book, there's a difference between finding fault and taking responsibility. A fault is a crack in the ground. Responsibility is the ability to respond. And so when you see a situation, you have an ability to respond to it, and you take advantage of that ability, and you see this child, right? You think the child's stupid, now you're thinking in power terms. You think the child is immature, is inexperienced, you're thinking in terms of responsibility. And you take advantage of your ability to respond in that area to the challenge. Now you can guide the child, teaching them how to grow, not where to grow.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's a lot to unpack, really, when you think about the project. No, that's the wrong word. I was good, but when you think about the possibilities of where a child can go, and all of these little minor decisions that are made, and I think back to being a child and the teachers that use that sense of power, and you feared them, but then at the same time you didn't respect them.
Right.
And then you had the other teachers where they were trying to show you something, obviously. Right. I had math teachers that tried to show me things, whether I was able to perceive it or not. I knew they genuinely wanted to show me another world, and you respected that. You admired that.
Well, see, that's the difference. I think that there's a difference between respect and fear. Fear is one way.
Right.
Respect is two ways. If you are treating an individual who is in power above you one way, and they're not treating you the same way, if you're treating them as though they have some ability to wreck or advance your life, then you're not respecting them. You're fearing them.
Yeah.
And they have no respect for you. But if you have a teacher, or you have, if you have a teacher or you have someone who is in power over your life, and your relationship is more peer oriented, man to man oriented, man to woman oriented, woman to woman oriented, adult to adult, that's respect.
Yeah.
Because this individual sees you as just another individual rather than someone beneath them.
Right.
See, when it comes down, let's go back to one last thing real quick. I want to jump back to, we were talking about money being the root of all evil.
Sure.
It's not money. The love of money is the root of all evil. That is the actual quote. The love of money, greed. Greed, not just loving money, but loving power.
I can definitely see that. Power, absolute power, absolutely corrupts.
Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
That's dangerous. That's why Lao Tzu said it this way. He said, a leader is at his best when no one knows he's there. And when he's accomplished his goal, everybody thinks they did it.
Yeah, well, that's pretty wonderful. Wouldn't it be great to have leaders like that inside our country?
Oh, God, wouldn't it be awesome? Instead of this orange guy walking around going, hey, I'm the best. Shut up, Ali.
I mean, I love it for entertainment value, because if you look around my home here, I got WWE.
Right.
And that's... And I love
is that
a good
the dipshit
promo.
Rock? I mean, is that the Rock?
I love a good promo, but yeah, it's just unfortunate we have this posturing, and it makes me feel like there's no respect for people.
Yeah.
And politicians think we're all idiots.
Right. This is why I told my daughter, and this was one of the problems that I had with this is one of the things that I told my daughter, was that people are more important than what they can do for you.
People are more important than
what they
can do for you.
What they can do for you. They're not just tools.
Yeah. And, going back to money too, and now that we're kind of related to the bigger picture, instead of an individual, but as like a society and leadership, we have fiat currency that's based on, it's no gold standard. They kind of
Yeah.
just make it.
It's just a piece of paper. Somebody said this is worth that much.
And we have trillionaires in the world. I think there's a couple, and there's a lot of billionaires inside our country. So there's just a lot of wealth.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on universal basic income?
Universal basic income.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Universal basic income is a new concept to me that was brought to light by Andrew Yang, who ran for president on the Democratic ticket. And was idea that I thought was kind of fascinating because it basically says we're moving towards a place in society where most of these mundane tasks that we used to have to do with manual labor are now being done by robots. So maybe we don't need to put all our value on how much money we earn, and we just give people enough money where they can go ahead and pay their rent and eat their food.
You're talking about equality of outcome.
No, I'm not talking about.
Oh no,
equality
you're
of
not
outcome.
talking about his.
No, and he wasn't talking about that
Right.
either, because equality of outcome is definitely not the same. That's just what I'm talking about. Is everybody inside the country gets $2,000 a month, and you can also work a job,
Right.
and you can also become a billionaire, and you can
Right.
also have your yachts, and you can also.
But see, here's where I see the problem. And
Sure.
this is a question I've asked a couple of kids now. And these are kids that are like 10 years old and kids that are in there that are, teens, early teens.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised how smart they are in certain areas, but how monumentally uneducated and unguided they are in various others. When you see, and I hope there's none of them watching because this is a question that I ask kids. When you see, so you know that a caterpillar becomes a butterfly.
Yes,
It goes through a metamorphosis process inside a cocoon.
I believe that.
But when it starts to struggle to come out of the cocoon, right? And then it comes out and it becomes a butterfly. If you come across that and you see the butterfly struggling to get out of the cocoon,
Yes.
what happens when you help it?
Dies.
It dies.
Sure.
And see, what happens when you subsidize absolutely every bit of life at the most basic level? You literally can bring people to a point where they no longer need to do anything, so you don't have to worry about them having the yacht anymore. All my bills are paid.
Well, are all your bills paid? And that's where having like a certain amount of income would have you live in a way where maybe if you had 3 or 4 roommates, you'd be able to afford a roof over your head and some food on the table, but you wouldn't be able to live the way that you desire.
Well, that's the thing. It takes away motivation.
Huh.
It takes away motivation. What happens when you go to certain places, there's a sign that says, don't feed the squirrels.
Well,
Why?
don't you think there's more to life than money? Don't you think that there's
Oh, yeah.
there's a drive within every human that's
This
something.
is what's more important than money.
Sure.
It's relationships.
Relationships.
Reducing suffering.
Writing that book that you just wrote, that's more important than money, I think. Making that music video that I'm going to release in a couple of weeks, that's more important than money. The relationship, creating and taking care of your children and allowing them to dream big and
Exactly.
better. Those are all things that are more important than money. So, I mean, does money get inside the way when you work 40 hours a week and you're doing something that you really, really hate doing?
Right.
You know,
It gets in the way when you're working 80 hours a week. It gets in the way when that's all you see.
yeah,
Is money. And the lack of it or the preponderance of it.
sure.
But the issue is when you start, when the money becomes all you see, when your life starts to surround money, then people start to resemble to you a means to an end. And this can be dangerous. If you start looking at people as this guy can get me money, that guy can get me money, what happens when that guy can't?
Sure.
You just quit talking to them. Problem is, that's your kid.
Yeah, right.
Or that's your brother. Or that's your dad. Or that's your aunt. Or your uncle. Or some member of the family that you need to have that connection. Right?
Right. I think if the pandemic taught us anything, is that human connection is way more important than we
Absolutely
really.
necessity.
Yeah, it's a
Yes.
necessity. So you're right. And once you start monetizing relationships, that becomes a big problem, and it's one of the problems of going into business with friends.
Yeah.
Because I have some friends I went into business with, and
And you found out they were Scorpions.
we're
huh?
we're still great friends,
Oh, really?
and we're no longer in business together at all. I think we kind of missed the work more than the money. 'Cause
Yeah.
the money was never that great
Yeah.
anyway. But we miss working with each other,
That's the thing. Yeah.
and I also got friends too. That maybe they were Scorpions, but that's probably a lot less of those than people I genuinely enjoyed creating and working with.
Exactly.
So that's why I think sometimes this whole idea of survival and money, and if we let people survive and we gave them a little bit of money, I think the idea that would kill their desire to do things doesn't make sense to me, because I see people already that need to work for themselves. I lived in Los Angeles with 60, 70,000 homeless people. These people needed to do something, and they weren't doing it.
Well, I was homeless.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time around homeless people. You know what they make out here in Houston? $30 an hour holding a sign.
Panhandling, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
$30 an hour. It's all tax free. They don't have to do anything. And see, this is when you start to have this problem of this guy works 7 days a week. He gets $30 an hour. What if he wants to take a day off and take a bath?
Right.
Right? I used to know a guy who would tell me how much money he had. Man, I had $750 stolen from me, plus a new laptop, plus a brand new cell phone.
Yeah.
Right? I had $1,450 over here, and it got stolen from me, plus this and that and thus. The only thing he didn't tell me about was his car. He didn't have a car.
Right.
Yeah, or that I know of.
Uh-huh.
You know, I remember watching them being dumped off of the back of a truck at a this is your corner. You get off the back of the truck. Here's your sign.
Yeah.
I'm going to go drop the next guy off, you know? And the thing is, and see, I was homeless. I've been homeless 3 times.
Sure.
Right? But there comes this is one of the reasons that I never wanted to go to that job of standing on the corner with a sign, right? The reason I didn't want to go get that job, 2 reasons. One, I couldn't bring myself to looking like that.
Yeah.
And then and another thing was, once you start there and you go back to getting a normal job and you're getting paid $8, $9, $10, $12 an hour,
Yeah.
this starts to look good again.
Oh yeah.
$30 an hour for
It
free.
certainly does. And that's why I think this whole idea of money goes back to perception, and it
is perception. Yeah.
It certainly also is a great big mess when it's definitely not based upon
There's
effort.
there's no actual inherent value to the money that's being given to us now.
No.
Right? So like I pull out of here. I'm not gonna show you how little I have. I got a little $10 bill right here, right?
Yeah.
The only thing that tells me how valuable this is
Yeah.
the government.
That's it.
And the fact that you and I agree on it.
And then we agree on it.
That's
sure.
it. Right? But there's no actual usable value that it actually has. I remember working for wisdom and working for knowledge and not getting any of it. That would have been useful.
Yeah.
I'll work for you if you teach me something, and they wouldn't teach me anything. You see, that is inherent value.
I've been there too. Well, this has been an interesting conversation.
Yeah, it has.
And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel.
Yep.
We'll be unloading a lot of these for you.
And the conversations get better and better from here on out.
And it's time to eat some lunch.
Have fun.